Hello and welcome to iFashy. Today's tutorial will be teaching us how to make this very beautiful dress. As you can see on your screen, the part that we will be drafting in this dress is just the upper part from the shoulder to the hip line. Because the down part of this dress doesn't need to be drafted, you just need to drape and gather the down part on the upper part that we will be drafting. And here are the pattern papers that we drafted from this tutorial. Here's the waist part, and then here's the upper part, and we also have the back pattern. The upper part of the back of this dress is opened, and then the front part has a crossed neckline. So after drafting out, we went ahead to cut out on fabric. You have to first of all cut out on a plain fabric, either crepe fabric or lycra or whichever fabric you want to use for the base, before you now start pleating this mesh on top of the base. After using the pattern to cut out the exact measurement you have on your pattern as the base, you bring out a very wide mesh fabric and then start pleating it on top of this base in order to achieve this beautiful design we have on this dress. So if this is something you're interested in, guys, let's get straight into this tutorial. And before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Remember to like and share this video so that it will be recommended to others who this tutorial will be very useful to. And please remember to also follow us on other social media platforms at iFashy, because we also share tutorials there. Now here is the pattern paper that we will be drafting on. I've gone ahead to place my pattern paper on fold because at the end of this tutorial, I'm going to open it out for you guys to see how the full front looks like. So after folding your pattern paper, you are going to come down with 5 inches from the top of your paper. This 5 inches is not enough to go round the back of our neck. We are just leaving 5 inches for now. When we are cutting on fabric, we will need to cut more than 5 inches as the rope that is going to the back of our neck. But for now, this 5 inches line will serve as our shoulder line, where we'll start taking all our measurements downwards from. And the first measurement we'll take downwards from this shoulder line is our bust point measurement. And that bust point, I'm using 10 inches from the shoulder to the bust point. I'll rule a straight line on that point and label it the bust line. After that, the next line we're going to mark out is the under bust line, which is the measurement you have from the shoulder to the under bust. And then after that, the next line we're going to mark out is our front waist line. This is the measurement you have from your shoulder to your front waist. Remember in our measurement video, we taught us how to measure your front waist and your back waist and take them separately in order to avoid having zipper budges or puffs at the back of your dress. So here we will impute our front waist measurement on our front waistline, and from that front waistline we'll go down with 9 inches to get the hip line. This is because with the design of this dress we are working on, the dress has an asymmetric shape from the waist to the hip, so we will be needing this hip line. After marking all these lines out, the next line we are going to be taking is our chest line. To get your chest line, some people usually go up with 2 inches from the bust line, but this standard 2 inches doesn't work for everybody. The safest method I use is to divide my bust circumference by 6 and add 1.5 to my answer. If it is a big busted client, I'll add 2 inches to my bust circumference divided by 6 to get my chest line. So after dividing my bust circumference by 6 and adding 1.5, I have 7.6, and I'll impute that measurement from my shoulder downwards and mark that point, and that will be my chest line. So now that we have the chest line out, we need to mark out our armhole measurement. So we are going to take our shoulder measurement divided by 2 and impute it on the shoulder line, and then come down from your answer by 1 inch for the shoulder slope. This is a basic bodice that we are drafting out, okay? If you don't know how to draft a basic bodice already, registration is currently on for our 3 months beginners masterclass. It is very necessary to know how to draft these basic bodies from the top of your head, because this is the foundation of almost every outfit we make. So after coming down with our shoulder slope, we are going to have to slant this measurement to meet our neckline. And here I'm using 3 inches for my neck width, and on that 3 inches, I'll mark a slant line to meet my shoulder slope. And then mark a straight line downwards to meet your shoulder measurement on the chest line. We're going to divide what we have on this straight line by 2 to mark out the midpoint, because we need to take 0.5 inch on that midpoint to guide our armhole curve. So after taking that 0.5, we're going to use our curve ruler to connect from the shoulder through the 0.5 to meet the bust measurement on the chest line. And after this, we'll go ahead and take our bust span measurement, which is the nipple to nipple measurement on the bust line, the under bust line, on the waistline, and we'll extend that dart with 6 inches from the waist downwards. So after dividing my bust span measurement by 2 and imputing it on these 4 points, we'll mark a straight line there and go to the under bust line to take our under bust tightening dart. So for you to know the dart that you'll be taking off from this under bust point, you are going to subtract your under bust circumference from your bust circumference. I have 34 as my under bust circumference and I have 37 as my bust circumference. So if I subtract 34 from 37, I'll have 3 inches left. And these 3 inches will be divided into 2 because our paper is on fold, right? So we'll remove 1.5 inch from this under bust. And this 1.5 will be divided into 2, 1.5 on the left and 1.5 on the right. So I'll use my straight ruler to connect it from this point downwards to the end of the dart extension. And on this other side front, I'll use my curve ruler on the under bust part and then my straight ruler from the under bust to the dart extension. After we are done marking out the dart, we'll go ahead and take our measurements on all of these lines. You impute your bust circumference divided by 4 on the bust line, your under bust circumference divided by 4 on the under bust line, and your waist circumference divided by 4 on the waist line. On the waist and the under bust line, remember to replace this dart that we have here so that by the time you remove the dart, your measurements will not be short. Okay? And then we'll now move to the hip line and impute our hip measurement divided by 4 and mark it out before we use our ruler to connect all these measurements together. From the hip line upwards to the waist, from the waistline upwards to the armhole point. And when we are done with that, we'll go ahead and remove our side bust dart. This side bust dart, like I always tell us, is the difference we have from the front waist measurement and the back waist measurement. We need to remove it from this side so that by the time we join our back to our front, our sides will align. Now I'm going to remove 1.5 inch from the bust line downwards because that is the difference I have in my front and back waist measurement. So after removing that 1.5, we'll connect it to meet 1 inch before our bust line. And with that, we are almost done with the front part of this dress. The next thing we need to do now, if you look at the inspiration of this dress, this asymmetric curve that we have from the waistline down to the hip line, we need to now mark it out. And to do that, I will go down from the waistline with 4 inches before I connect from that 4 inches to meet my hip line using my curve ruler. At this point, my camera stopped recording, but as you can see, what we just did here was come down with 4 inches from the waistline and then curve it to meet our hip line in order to be able to achieve this curve we have on the front part of this dress. Also on the front part of this dress, we have this keyhole that is starting from the under bust upwards before the crossed neck, right? So we're going to determine how deep you want it to be. So first of all, we need to mark out our neck depth. We're using the regular 3 inches neck depth because I just need to mark that out to guide the length of this keyhole. After marking out the neck, if you look at the shoulder, we don't need all of these shoulders that we have on this pattern. So I'm going to come outwards with 3 inches from the neckline to mark the width of the shoulder, right? So after marking out the width of the shoulder, we'll go ahead and use our curve ruler to mark out this keyhole opening that we have on the chest. So kindly take note of how I'm marking this out. You don't need this to be too wide, right? So after marking that out, we'll go ahead now and mark out our new armhole curve, because the first one we marked before is too wide. We will now mark from this new 3 inches we came out from the neck down to meet our armhole that we have before. Now, remember I mentioned we are going to extend this strap from the shoulder when we are cutting on fabric. So I'm just going to connect upwards to the end of the top of my paper now. And then when we are cutting on fabric, we can now extend it to be longer so that it can cross to the back of our neck. And that's that for this upper part of this top. The width of this strap that is going to the back of our neck completely depends on how wide or slim you want yours to be, right? So now that we are done with all of these, I'm going to go ahead and use my tracing wheel to trace out all these lines that I have here on this pattern to show on the other side, so that I can open it out and remark all of these lines on the other side, so that when we open it out after marking, you can see how the full front of this dress looks like. You know that feeling when you see a dress online, you make a screenshot and you recreate it for yourself? Yes, we are calling on everyone who is interested in learning how to make beautiful outfits. Whether you're a beginner, you want to learn from scratch, or you already have your skill, you want to perfect your skill. Registration is currently on for our 3 months beginners and intermediate class, and we are currently on discount. Don't forget to check the description box for the link to register for this class. So after marking out all these lines on the other side, you can see what we have. The next thing I'm going to do now is to demarcate my underbust line, because this dress that we are working on, there is a joining on the underbust part. From the shoulder to the underbust and from the underbust to the waistline, we have a joining there. So I'm going to go ahead and use this blue marker to mark out this line, so that when I'm cutting out, we know that we'll be cutting this upper part separate and this waist to down part separate. So watch closely and see how I am cutting it now. We're going to go ahead and start cutting from the sides. When you're cutting these sides, endeavor to close your side bust darts before you continue cutting. Because by the time we close the side bust darts, after closing this side bust darts, the line that we have there will not align again. So you need to use your ruler and your marker to realign that line to make sure what you have from the underbust to the armhole is aligned. So after closing my side bust darts, I'll use my paper tape to tape it down, and I'll go ahead and cut out the remaining parts of this paper. Just watch closely how I'm cutting it. You have to first of all cut open the dart that we have before you can close the side bust dart. And after closing that, you go ahead and cut out through the armhole, cut out the neck, and then after that, we'll go ahead and separate this upper part from this down part of this pattern. So after separating the middle part of this dress and the upper part of this dress, I'm going to go ahead and use my gum to gum this center front to the 2 side fronts before we cut out this excess we have on these down parts that we don't need. Okay, you can use a paper tape if you don't have a gum. You can use your pin to just hold it together, because this center part needs to be together as one piece when you're transferring it to your fabric. And after cutting out this down part, this is what we have. We have the center part of this dress and the upper part of this dress. At this point, this upper part is going to be longer than the center part because we have not closed these 2 darts that we have here, right? So I'm going to take my tape now and measure what I have on the down part and also measure what I have on the upper part, to be sure that what I have on this down part is aligning with what I have on the upper part. So after measuring, what I have is equal, which means after closing the darts and joining it together, they are going to align. We're going to keep this front piece aside now and go ahead to draft the back part of this dress. The back part is very simple, guys, because like I said before, this is like an halter neck dress that has an open back. So on this new pattern paper, we're going to go ahead and mark out the shoulder line at the beginning of my paper. From this shoulder line, I'll come downwards with my bust point measurement, which is 10 inches like we did for front. I'll mark that point and roll out a straight line there, which will be our bust line. The next line after the bust is our waist line. Remember, the back waistline is different from the front waistline. So you're going to place your tape from the shoulder line downwards and take your back waist line. And after the back waist, we'll go ahead and mark out the hip. Because remember, we have a curve on this dress that is extending towards the hip, right? So I'll join my paper now so that I can get up to 9 inches, which is my hip length from my waist. And then I'll label that line my hip line before we start taking our measurements on this line. Before we do anything on this back pattern, we need to mark out our zipper allowance at the beginning of our paper. I'm using 1.5 inch here. You can use 1 inch, especially if you're working with a stretchy fabric. This dress was made with a lycra or a stretchy crepe and a mesh on top, right? Which means it has tendency to stretch. So taking 1 inch as your zipper allowance is just enough. So after marking out the zipper allowance, we'll now go ahead and take the chest line. Remember how we got the chest line for front? If you don't, please take this video back and watch how we got our chest line for the front. It's too early for you to forget. So after marking out the chest line, I'll go ahead and take off 1.5 inch from my waistline, which will serve as the waist dart. This 1.5 inch is divided into 2 on both sides of this dart line, which is 0.75 on the left and 0.75 on the right. And remember how we got our dart line, our nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. And after marking out our dart for the back, we'll go ahead and take our body measurements on all of our lines. The bust circumference divided by 4 on the bust line, the waist circumference divided by 4 on the waistline. After marking the waist circumference divided by 4, go ahead and replace this 1.5 inch dart that we are taking off from the waist. And then we'll go to the hip line and mark our hip measurement divided by 4. And when we're done with that, we'll use our ruler to connect these lines together from the hip to the waist, from the waist to the chest line. Now, another important thing we need to take off is the 0.5 inch on our waistline to cinch our zipper inside to avoid any bulges whatsoever on that back. So on this waistline, you come inwards with 0.5 on the zipper allowance and connect it upwards to the end of the dress at the back. Now this end of the dress, I'm using 1 inch upwards from my bust line, and I connected from the armhole to that bust line. Before we will now connect the 0.5 inch zipper slant upwards. Which means if you took 1.5 inch as your zipper allowance before, after removing this 0.5, you're going to have 1 inch left. This is very necessary. You come in with 0.5 on the waistline and use your straight ruler to slant it upwards to the end of the zipper allowance and downwards to the end of the zipper on the hip line. Now, the down part of the back of this dress also has a curve, just like the front. The difference is this down part, we came down with 6 inches. It is lower because of the butt we have at the back, right? So the back will not be as curvy as the front curve. So after slanting this 6 inches to the hip line, we'll go ahead and cut out our back piece. After cutting out the back piece, you reintroduce your front piece and measure the 2 sides to be sure that they are equal. Remember, we have closed the side bust darts that we have on the front. So now this back and front, it's supposed to have the same measurement so that after joining, you will not have any issues. So now that mine is equal, I'm going to go ahead and separate my center back and my side back so that I'll have 2 pieces of the back. Also remember to cut out the 0.5 inch we came inwards on the zipper allowance. Remember to remove it from your pattern before transferring to fabric. So here are all our patterns that we just drafted: the upper part of the front, the center part of the front, and then the 2 pieces that we have for the back. What you just need to do from here is to transfer this pattern to fabric and your beautiful dress will be out in no time. And like I explained before, when cutting out this pattern on your fabric, the base of this dress has to be a plain fabric, not the mesh itself. So you either use a stretchy crepe or a lycra fabric to cut out this base. It is after cutting out this base, you now spread a wide mesh fabric on top. That is how we achieved this second part. My camera stopped recording, but what I did here, this is the base that we just cut out, right? And I started pleating. You fold and pleat and pin. Fold, pleat and pin. It is advisable to start your your pleating from the upper part so that the pleats we have on this center part will be facing upwards. So when you're done with this center part, you also introduce the upper part of this dress and then repeat the same thing. We have already cut out the crepe, which is the base, the one under, as you can see, right? Then we'll place our mesh fabric on top of this crepe and pleat. But the pleat we have on this upper part, as you can see, is facing upwards. It's not going sideways. That's exactly how this dress was made. And then for the lower part, which is the skirt part, is going to be pleated straight down, right? Which means the pleat we have on the down part and the pleat we have on this upper part are lines. The only one that goes sideways is the one we have on this center. And that's how this beautiful dress was made. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have watched to this point and you have not subscribed to iFashy channel, please click on that subscribe button and then remember to like and share this video, and I'll see you in our next tutorial.